My name is Daniela Raich. I'm an 8th grade student at Bicultural Hebrew Academy of Connecticut. I will be interviewing my Zadie, whose name is Marty Roshwork, about his life and legacy. This interview is being recorded for the Oral History Collection for the Jewish Historical Society of Fairfield County's Archives, as well as our family archives. Over the next 15 minutes or so, I will ask you questions that will help me learn more about you and our family's history, especially our Jewish history. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. Let's start with you telling me your full name.
My full name is Martin Jeffrey Roshwork.
Who are you named after?
I'm named after a great-grandfather whose name was Moshe.
Do you have a Hebrew name, and what is it?
My Hebrew name is Moshe Yosef.
In this class, I've been learning about the immigration of Jews to the U.S. and other places. Do you know where your parents, our family, immigrated from?
I do. My father's family, who I'm going to tell you a lot about, came from Ozherev in Poland. That's where my father was born. And my mother's family, originally from Russia and Poland, but my grandmother was born in New York, and my grandfather and grandmother immigrated in 1910 from New York to Toronto, Canada, which is where we are.
Before they immigrated to Canada, did they talk about what life was like before they left? Do you have any stories about Jewish life there?
Well, the main stories come from my father, because he was 8 years old when he left, and he remembers it being a very difficult life, and that the Jews weren't very welcome in Poland, and he knows that his aunts and uncles, who were the most educated and went to live in Warsaw, which was more of a city, which had more opportunities.
Did your parents or anyone in your family experience or were they affected by the Holocaust or pogroms?
Well, the Holocaust started with the Germans invading Poland in 1939, and my family, my father had come in 1926 to Canada, and his father, who had sponsored them to come to Canada, also sponsored many of his brothers and sisters. There were brothers and sisters who stayed in Poland, especially the ones in Warsaw, and they did not survive the war.
Can you tell me anything about our family's immigration to Canada? Who came over and around when?
So my Zadie came over around 1909 to Hamilton in Canada and began working as a shamus and a bal kore in a synagogue there. He was also a tailor, which was very common in my family. And he went back to Poland a couple of times, and once came with his oldest son, and then he sponsored my booby and my father and my father's sister in 1926.
This is great background. Now I'd like you to take out the items that you brought to talk about today.
Okay.
What is this artifact? Tell me about it.
So this is a book called The Memories of Ozherev, which has the whole history going back over 300 years, and it was written just after the war in 1945 by an Ozherev survivor who was in Paris. So he wrote it in French, and then a cousin of mine translated it into English, and I have both the English version and the French version. My cousin lived in Montreal, so he was bilingual, French and English.
Why is this special to you and your family?
Well, it tells all the history and stories. It has a lot of pictures of the Rochworth family. It has a map of Ogerev that shows who lived in some of the houses, and also who was deported and didn't survive the war. So it's a history of about 2,000 people who lived in Ogerev. When the Nazis came, more Jews moved from the outlying areas of Ogerev into Ogerev, where they were kept in a ghetto, and it was around 4,000 people at the time of the deportations.
Do you know how old this is?
Well, it's about 80 years old because it was written right after the war.
And now can I see the family photograph?
Oh, well, the photograph I brought for you is a photograph of a passport that my booby used to get out of Poland, and it says both passport, and then there's a stamp saying the word visa, and it looks like it's 1926.
Okay. Now I'd like to ask you a few questions about your life growing up. Where did you grow up, and who lived with you growing up?
So I grew up in Toronto on College Street, and I lived with my parents in a building that was my mother's parents' building. They had a delicatessen on the main floor, and the second floor had the sort of living room, dining room, and we lived on the third floor. And I had my own room. My parents had a room. My grandparents had a room. And before my mother got married, her sister and her husband had their children and grew up in this building. And that's where we stayed until 1960. Then my parents bought a house, and my grandparents were able to move in with my parents.
What was life like? Tell me something about school life.
Well, I was very lucky and got to go to a Jewish day school that was right around the corner from where I lived, and I enjoyed it very much. We had, in Hebrew, we had separate classes for religious studies, just the boys in one class, the girls in another, and then we would be together for general studies.
What did you and your childhood friends do for fun?
Well, we did a few things. Playing soccer was always popular, but one of the things I remember was we all collected baseball and hockey cards, and we would play games with the cards being up against the wall and trying to land on the card of one of the other kids, and then if you landed on it, you would take that card. We played a lot with cards, bouncing balls, handballs against the wall, good stuff like that.
Did you go to synagogue? What was that like?
Well, there was a Shabbat synagogue and I guess daily prayers in my school building, and because it was so close, I would go over, and I would also be able to participate in the service because I had learned Hebrew. That was good. One of my favorite memories is Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We would walk to a synagogue that was a couple of blocks away, and the chestnut trees would be dropping their chestnuts on the sidewalk, and since I was a kid, I'd be kicking them, and some adult would be telling me to stop kicking the chestnuts.
When you were a teenager, did you have a bar mitzvah?
I had a wonderful bar mitzvah. I studied hard for it. I think I learned the entire Torah for my portion. I know it was February 9th, 1963, and my parents made a luncheon for us. It was in a very modern, large synagogue called Adath Israel, which actually we don't live far from right now. And we had what was called a night affair, and there was a live band with dancing. So my parents really wanted to make it something very special.
And what was most meaningful to you about it?
One of the meaningful things was for the night affair, my parents had me and all my friends at the head table. And it was really neat, and it was a smart idea, because normally, and these were all boys, they would goof around at a bar mitzvah, and because they were at the head table, they had to sit and be mature. And so it was very memorable, and they all remember my birth.
Now, I would like you to pick your favorite Jewish holiday and describe how you and your family celebrated it when you were a child.
Well, I think every child remembers Hanukkah, because Hanukkah is when you got gifts. And we would get Hanukkah geld, which was money, and I remember the chocolate coins, and we would play games with the dreidel. And I wasn't great at spinning a dreidel, not then, I'm better now, but it would always be who could keep the dreidel going the longest, and it was fun, a lot of fun.
Now I'd like to talk about our family traditions. What are your favorite family traditions?
Well, you're here right now in Toronto because we've been celebrating Passover, and you're here. We had everybody in the family for the two Seders, which was 22 people, and it was a great turnout. And one of the traditions we have at the Seders, which you participated in, is we have the youngest members of the family perform the 10 plagues for us. And I think the one that's the most fun of the 10 plagues, although they're all good and all imaginative, with finger puppets and masks and all kinds of things, is when we do Hail, Barad, which is we have these styrofoam balls that don't hurt, but they get thrown by the kids at all kinds of different adults, and the adults then pick up these dozens of white styrofoam balls and throw them right back at the kids, and that's always a highlight.
Did anyone in your family serve in the military?
Yes, my father served in the Canadian Army in World War II, which was very ironic because he landed in Halifax in 1946 on the way to Hamilton and Montreal, in Toronto where we live. But in 1942, he was in the Canadian Army, and he had to go right back to Halifax and take a troop ship over to the UK. And he was in England preparing for the invasion of Normandy, and he was there for almost 2 years. And then when that happened in June of 1944, he was fighting in Normandy, and it took over a month to deal with the German army that was there, and then as part of the Canadian Army, the Canadians were sent north, and they fought the Nazis, and they freed Belgium and Holland, and the people were extremely appreciative to be free of Nazi rule. and from there he would have gone into Germany, and he saw the destruction that had been done to Germany by the Allied bombers, and so anyway, I know he told me that war is just a terrible, terrible thing, especially the time he spent in the trenches, and you know, that was the experience.
And how did you meet Bubby?
Oh, well, that was a great occasion, very lucky occasion for me. We were both members of the B'nai B'rith Youth Organization, and we were in our later teens, and I was the president of my chapter, boys chapter. She was the president of her chapter, the girls chapter, and we were organizing a social with our two chapters, and sometimes the social chair people would organize stuff, but we got involved, and just loved talking to your booby, and married her about 4 or 5 years later.
What did you do to make a living in your adult life?
Okay. Well, I was lucky to get to go to a great law school here in Toronto, and I then was able to article at a top Toronto law firm, and then I spent 25 years at a firm called Davies, Ward and Beck, and I learned a whole slew of areas of law, eventually mostly practicing in the tax area. One of our clients, which you may find of interest, was the Reichman family, and in the 1980s, because this was, I started practicing in 1974, the Reichman family built the World Financial Center, which is near Battery Park, and it's 3 very modern-looking buildings, and it had tenants like American Express, who I think have been there the entire 40-plus years that the buildings have existed. Anyway, I practiced for 45 years, and it was very challenging and gratifying, and I got to work with so many smart people, and that gives you incentive to learn more and try harder, and it worked out well.
Now we are going to wrap up with one more question. What advice do you have for future generations?
Well, I'm thinking of you in particular, and it's that it's very important, the upbringing you have and the people you surround yourself with, and there's nobody better than starting with your parents, who, because there will never be anybody who can ever love you and be devoted to you as much as your parents. They want the very best for you, and they've already experienced a lot of life, so they kind of know what one needs to succeed, and best ways to behave and make decisions, and that's important. And also your friends that you surround yourself with are very important, because there are friends who are nice people, and they want the best for you, and they're supportive of you, and they listen to you. And then there are friends who really don't necessarily care about you, and don't care if harm comes to you, and it's important to stay away from those people, and not make them people that you hang around with. So that's what I would have to say.
Thank you so much for your time.
You are most welcome.